Chuseok is the Korean holiday of Thanksgiving, and I'll never forget the last one. It was the day I got to save someone's life. After a night of partying with some friends, I got out of the bar at Cheongju near Sachang Sagori, and this taxi came to a screeching halt. I didn't see the impact. I didn't hear an impact either. It was weird. I saw clothes in the road, and my eyes weren't adjusted to the different light levels with the darkness and the street lights, but it just looked like a pile of clothes. That's what I thought it was. That happens sometimes. Someone's clothes falls out of a car and another car slams on their brakes, but I did hear the woman scream. A bunch of people came running up, and I knew exactly where I was so I could call an ambulance, but native speaking Koreans were already doing that, so there was really no point in me jamming up the switchboard. They kept trying to move him, trying to pick him up, and I had to insist that they not do that. I eventually had to mime a broken bone to get them to understand. I mean, if he had a spinal injury or a neck injury, you could cut his spinal cord, you could cut his windpipe, you could cut an artery. He'd be dead before even an expert could do anything about it. So finally, they were encouraging him to stay still, and then suddenly he stopped moving. He stopped moaning. And I went, uh-oh. I took off my glasses and I put them against his nose, and my glasses didn't fog up. I took my index and middle finger and put them to the side of his neck near the windpipe. No pulse. Do you know what it's like to watch someone slip away right in front of you? Well, this is the third time it's happened in front of me. The next 2 seconds were the most intense in a long time. A bunch of questions flooded through my head. You see, there's a lot of things that are common sense in the United States that are not common sense in Korea, and vice versa. Do the Korean people know about CPR? If they know about CPR, are they also aware of the little known fact that you almost have to crack a rib, or else you didn't do it right? Do they know that breaking ribs is quite common? How will these people react if I were to put my mouth on an unconscious man's lips and then start breaking the ribs in his chest? Would they take a tire iron to the side of my head? Do the Good Samaritan Laws exist in any form in Korea? Do they apply to registered aliens? Is my expired CPR card issued by the American Red Cross, which is not in my possession, sufficient to indemnify me against a lawsuit? All these things flowed through my head in those 2 seconds. And after they had finished, I located the xiphoid process bone and measured 4 fingers up from there to the sternum and prepared to begin compressions, and suddenly he moaned and turned his head. He had blood on his arm. Just a drop. I took another look at the cab, and the windshield was just smashed on one side. The impact. I mean, he didn't appear to have any broken bones, but it must have hurt real bad. I mean, his eyes, he wasn't actually crying, but around his eyes there was moistness, and every now and then he'd open them and then try to get up, and thank God everyone encouraged him to stay down. Finally, a police cart came, but I stayed a little longer. I wanted to make sure nobody touched him until the medics got there. And finally, it wasn't that long, maybe 10 minutes, but it felt like 45. They got there, and I said to my friend Lee something a little poetic like, Our usefulness here is at its end. Only one more thing remains for us to do, and that is to get out of the way. So we straightened and left, and the Korean people immediately followed. I mean, I'm a foreigner who doesn't speak Korean. I can't answer any questions. There's nothing more I can contribute at this point. It's time to get out of the way before I get sucked into something else. I walked past the ambulance and they weren't bringing out a neck collar or a backboard. I wanted to tell them. I wanted to insist. But I don't speak Korean, nor am I trained at any level of EMT, and it's not my place to tell licensed professionals their business. Even if I was a doctor, I wouldn't be licensed in Korea. So I got out of the way. I thought about that man for weeks. I asked some of my Korean friends if there was any way I could find out what happened to him, if he made it, if he was okay, if he was paralyzed. He had some blood on him, but it was just from a little cut. I was looking over his whole body, thinking it had come from somewhere else, but it just came from his shoulder. My friends asked me if I knew which hospital he went to, his name, anything, and I didn't. So I hope he's all right. Now, in the interest of fairness, it stands to reason that with all the adrenaline pumping, it was possible I didn't hold my glasses against his nose long enough for them to fog up. And it's possible, in being very careful not to put too much pressure on a neck that could be broken, that I was just not able to locate a pulse. It's not like that's my profession. I don't go around locating pulses all day. And on rare occasion, I've been unable to find my own on the first try. But it's possible, just possible, that if he did have a broken spine or a broken neck, that maybe I saved his life. Or maybe just saved him from further injury or paralysis or just the pain. But my Thanksgiving Day, I was glad I was able to do something useful, something important. As you get older, you start to look at your life and say, if I were to die right now, what will my life have been? What will it have stood for? What will my legacy be? If I had to explain to someone, well, what did you do with your life? This is definitely going to be one of the things that I would say. The rest of Chuseok weekend was also rather intense. Not as intense as that, but, well, interesting. Friday night, I just went straight home, didn't do anything. Saturday, I didn't do much during the day. I got a pizza that night, and there was this paper envelope on the floor. Just garbage. I wasn't going to pick it up, but it bothered me. I kept looking at it. It bothered me for some reason, so I picked it up. Put it on the table. Got it out of the way, but it still bothered me. Now, I had handled it, so I knew there wasn't anything inside. Couldn't be anything inside. It was too light. It was too thin. But it still bothered me, so I held it up to the light, and there was something inside. And I said, okay, well, it's a deposit document. That's all it is. Couldn't be anything else. So I opened it, and it has a few of those new 50,000 won notes inside, the largest paper money denomination Korea currently has. I looked to the woman I was sitting across from as I was waiting for my pizza and asked if it was hers, and she said no. The thought had occurred to simply stick it in my pocket and go home. But, well, I didn't. I gave it to the manager of the pizza shop. She did not say thank you. What she did do was tear a new one into the person who had lost the envelope prior to that. The next day, I went out with a good friend of mine on this double date with these two nurses at a gynecologist's office. Beautiful, beautiful women, sisters. They were fantastic looking. Terrible attitudes. I never want to see either one of them again, but really, really hot women. And while I was at the ATM in Cheongju getting some money, I found someone's ATM card. I wondered how much more temptation I was going to have to suffer this weekend. I brought my date the card, and I asked her if she would call the number on the back because I didn't speak enough Korean to do it, but she said you can't really turn it in. There's too much temptation. Somebody will just steal it or use it. The best thing for you to do is just rip it in half, which is if you've ever handled a Korean ATM card, that is no small feat without a pair of scissors. But eventually, bending it back and forth for no less than 7 minutes, I ripped it in half and then broke the microchip and put the pieces in different trash cans. And that was that day. Then there was a man that got hit by the car. And then finally, the last day of the 4-day weekend, or was it 3? The last day of the 3-day weekend, after escalating, after finding money, finding an ATM card, and then almost performing CPR, the last day of the vacation, I didn't go out at all. I'd had enough.